Welcome to 23 Degrees Sideways, Coyote in the Highlands. Another day where I get to do this outside is fantastic. So I've talked in a couple videos about market programming, removing your free will as a goal of marketing. And that extends into the media space and the political space. I've talked about a little bit about structural abundance, about how we've actually kicked most of these problems that everyone is so worried about. The population bomb that everyone was worried about. I haven't talked about the so-called energy crisis or anything, but poverty and global hunger. Everyone's starving and all of that. We're not quite on the edge of collapse the way that they try to tell you that we are, to make you obey them or make you powerless to resist. A lot of people resist and think that the EU, the World Economic Forum, the globalists are causing the climate crisis. But they're also the ones who are supposed to save you, right? Because you're powerless. That's the program they do. You're powerless. We talked about marketing psychology some, and I need to extend that and just put this little dot, one dot that connects everything into your mental awareness space right now. Media, the news, okay, are primarily, 100% primarily, marketing corporations. They're there to sell you a product and to keep you attached to their input so that they can sell you more products. That is what they are there for. And they're not there to inform you. They're not there to create some sort of balanced news information portal. They're not the fourth estate. They are corporations with a balance sheet whose sole purpose is to profit maximally off of your attention. They're there to sell you things. Let's just connect the dots, all right? And the fact is that they are pretty much, it's not even a revolving door, it's a symbiosis with the modern political establishment. That's just how it is. We have actual corporate fascism as a default set of governments, as a default governance in the West at least, much of the East as well. So that's, that's a big thing. And I want to get into China right now and how they're using that. They're incredibly willing to take things to their logical conclusion as far as that goes. Wow. So, the abundance that they're hiding from you. We're more likely to have gravity-powered spaceships than in the next 20 years than we are to actually see a global food collapse. Okay? I'm sorry. I know that everyone's really attached to this. Industrial agriculture is bad. Industrial agriculture is going to kill the planet, and it produces less food per acre than Bronze Age farming and all this other crap. I'm sorry. Because it's a really big space to be attached to. I'm in that space. I really do think that we have problems with industrial agriculture that we need to work on as humans for the health of humanity, but the world is suddenly going to be a wet bulb planet and no one will be able to survive and everything else because some farmer used a GMO crop and burned diesel in his tractor. Sorry guys, but take this a little too far. We have some problems. We're really not doing a good job with how we handle water cycles and our water supply. And I think de-desertification is actually probably a really good goal. And where I get into polarization and actually some amount of emotion and force on this is where people are deliberately programming you to look at non-problems so that you ignore the real problems, and it's all done for their power and benefit because they can't see abundant solutions either. They can't see a solution that allows other people to grow in freedom. Even if everything grows, they feel that takes away their power. There's the very negative mindset to that. And that's human. That's how power structures seem to work. We have to break them down every once in a while. And we are improving them. We have, over history, improved them some. First, we destroyed it all with agriculture, and we've been kind of stepping up the ladder ever since. We're almost to the point where agricultural settlement civilization is a positive instead of a negative for the human soul. So there's that. But we are on the cusp constantly, because we're humans, of massive technological advancement and really cool, good stuff. You have to allow it in your life. Okay, I'm going to get more into that, because that's it doesn't seem that way, but remember that everything that's in your reality is actually an interpretation. It's in your head, you know. It's not actually out there. The stuff that is out there is something you can only imperfectly know or suppose. So we'll get to that, but it's just when you look at these problems, look at them from a clown's eye view, from coyote eye view. Look at them from the raven's eye view. Okay, look at them backwards, sideways, upside down, in a funhouse mirror, because most of the time there's a positive aspect or something missing from the story, or the story is just ludicrous if you actually look at it, you know. I was having an argument the other day, and this guy kept bringing up that the wet bulb problem is going to kill humanity. The wet bulb problem, global warming, wet bulb, wet bulb, wet bulb, wet bulb. And I'm like, okay, look, I used to jog 4 miles, not F-O-U-R, but F-O-R. I used to jog for miles. I rarely would ever do more than 3. I'm not that much of a runner. But I was in the military, and I would jog for miles when I was in a, super secret squirrel land deployment in Jeddah. We were doing Red Sea blockade ops and stuff, and I would travel up and down the coast and stuff. We'd do airplanes, and I would jog in the Red Sea coast in wet bulb temperatures with wet bulb humidity, okay? Well over 95 degrees and well over 95% humidity, and I could jog for miles. The wet bulb thing is one of those, it's one of those things that seems like they're missing an awful lot. They're simplifying everything down to 2 variables, and they're missing the systems. They don't take into account anything like like solar input or wind speed, or there's nothing there, So I'm arguing with this guy, and it's all wet bulb this, wet bulb that, wet bulb this, wet bulb that. Mass extinction is causing global warming because humans are bad. And I'm like, all right, mass extinction. Remember, I've said this before. Biggest mass extinction event in planetary history was the Cambrian explosion. And if you look at it right, if you just look at things right, number of species lost, not amount of life developing on the planet, just number of species lost. Cambrian is it. Period. And so it's a funny way to look at things. Mass extinction, global warming, carbon this, carbon that, carbon levels, temperature rise. It's a very valid and seemingly demonstrable hypothesis that we've kept ourselves out of a cold snap at the tail end of an ice age. It's valid. Solar inputs are huge big deal on how this all plays out, and people don't want to talk about that. People, the climate emergency people really don't want to talk about that. They want it to be out of their hands. They want to feel powerless, but they also want it to be a blame, something they can blame on someone or something else, because they want to tear it down. A lot of this comes down to simplicity thoughts. The world is a very complex place, and if you're not prepared to accept things and live your life in that state where you've accepted reality, that brutal, stoic acceptance. This is the world. It is too complex for me to understand, and this is okay. that brutal fact, facing the brutal facts, or brutish facts, whatever. They're not necessarily beating you down. It's just that you have to be kind of brutal with some aspects of your programming to accept the facts. If you accept the brutal facts that the world's too complex and accept it and go past that, you can live a really awesome life that's full of attention and awareness, not ignoring. But for a lot of people, this complexity is too much. So they have to have simple problem, simple solution. You have to make everything into one overarching big simple problem. And the simple problem for the climate catastrophists is that people are bad. That's the problem. When you get it all down, you narrow it all down. It's the mass extinction, it's the carbon inputs, it's the pesticides, it's they pick on things that are outside their lives mostly. And so we pick on things that are outside our lives. We pick on things that are inputs we don't have control over, stuff like that. And it's pretty rough, that simplification. Because then every time someone has an answer, you have to have a new singular problem. That's where the wet bulb comes in as a program. It's just a programmed response, right? It's not really like an actual, hey, let's look at this theory, let's look at how things work. It's this singular programmed response. If I counter an argument, and you can watch this happen, if I counter an argument about this topic, then this other topic that is related to this idea, people bad for environment, people bad. It's those people who are bad, not me people who are bad, Then you just rotate to a different singular argument. Singular. There's no systems approach. There's no systems understanding because people really don't want that complexity. And the complexity is actually what makes everything work and makes everything so wonderful. But you have to a certain degree, and this is going to sound hippy-dippy, but you have to surrender your desire to control every aspect of the universe. You have to accept and surrender. Surrender in the moment to the world as it is. That doesn't mean you don't do things, okay? It's not surrendering your free will. It's actually gaining your free will. It's not surrendering your life actions. It's actually gaining your life actions. But you have to surrender to the complexity, surrender to the moment in its totality so that you can be free of the programs of that totality impinging on you. And it's Stoic. So Stoicism is very interesting. Remember the Stockdale paradox? That was Stockdale was a Stoic who was the longest prisoner of war, like in the Vietnam conflict or something. It was held for years and years and years. And he got through it, he said, by facing the brutal facts of existence. What is there? He never lost hope because he knew that no matter how it turned out, he had beaten the situation by accepting that it existed and facing the facts. And he talks about how the optimists, the ones who are like, oh, we'll be out by Christmas, oh, we'll be out by Easter, oh, we'll be out by, would lose hope and die because they were optimistic instead of reality-based, instead of looking at the situation as it is. Now, there's details in that. You can be optimistic and realistic. It's not an impossible thing. But that's the Stockdale paradox in a nutshell. That being able to accept reality actually gives you a strength to survive the worst things reality can throw at you. And that's a military, Navy, Stoic aspect of this concept of acceptance and surrender. You can't do anything until you accept and surrender, until you have faced those facts. So the programming against abundance that they are giving you is very much modeled on this idea of keeping you from accepting the systems approach and the complexity, and saying that, yeah, this stuff, because of human input, tends to spiral upwards. They want to keep you in an emergency mode, because that idea that you can make things better, that things spiral upwards, that you have an active part, is dangerous to them. Okay? Your ability to act is like an Ed Snowden in the NSA data center to them. It's some free individual, whether you like what he did or don't like what he did. That's exactly the threat they see, is that some free, uncontrolled individual can get into their cave. So there's that. And thus, you are full of doom and gloom, because they have programmed you to be. Again, not saying we don't have real problems. We always have problems, and one of the best things that we do as humans is solve problems. We absolutely have problems. Most of those problems are in fact caused by this entrenched elite power structure that is trying to tell you that you are powerless. No matter what, they tell you you are powerless. And that's the big thing about the doomerism and the world is going to end tomorrow. Okay, look at the food processing plant fire scare that's going on as I record this. It's probably going to fade again in another couple of days, except with the conspiracy-minded. If you look at the actual number of warehouses, number of fires, there's nothing going on here, okay? It's not that big a deal. There's been some really interesting events if you report them the right way, but there's nothing actually out of the ordinary. Nothing out of bounds of normal years, but the reporting is there. They need you to feel the doom, the imminent collapse, so that you don't go do something positive that increases freedom. Your job, I'm assigning you because I'm the emperor of everything, is to increase your freedom. It'll work that way, I promise. It makes total sense, right? Anyway, think about it, though. Your task for yourself probably could best be seen as increasing your freedom, and that might mean some uncomfortable looks at how addicted you are to negative viewpoints and doom. Stay sideways.